Hello and welcome to Everything Delivery. This podcast is Digital Pulse for the week ending Friday the 7th of July. Digital Pulse is our fortnightly newscast where we highlight some of the interesting things that have been happening. Find our latest episodes at everything.delivery/Digital Pulse. And if you're watching, you should be able to see this address in the address bar. This episode is sponsored by Nearform. Nearform has over 10 years experience in remote delivery, empowering clients to succeed in a digital world through application modernization, data, design, DevOps, and of course, product. You can find out more at nearform.com. I'm Dan Close, and as ever, I'm here with my co-host, Luca Anziani.
Hello.
Morning.
And welcome to the new episode. As usual, as Dan said, this happens every 2 weeks, and we try to recap the latest news in the market. We usually group them by topics, and if you are watching us, see that there are three main groups in the browser that you see there. And this time around, we're going to talk about data, we're going to talk about platform, we're going to talk about cost, and then a couple of tech news that you may want to have a look at if you haven't seen that already around. Again, we're not going to go deep on most of those articles. We're going to probably show a couple of highlights of the things that looked interesting to us, but you're going to find all the links in the show notes. So everything.delivery/digital pulse, if you want to find the show notes, there you're going to find all the links of the web pages we're going to visit today. Let's dive into it, and let's start from data. Dan, so I'm going to leave space to you.
Databricks, or really, we should be starting from a magic number, right? So everyone knows that the magic number is 3. Well, it actually turns out the magic number in AI is 1.3 billion. So this is the kind of exciting news off the back of, I think it was before the Databricks summit in the US. So basically, Databricks have agreed to spend 1.3 billion on Mosaic. So Mosaic is the company who kind of very famously got out in front of building models early and making them open source and possible commercial use. Databricks also very, very active in the open source space. They have combined their strengths, and you're soon going to be able to leverage two pretty awesome platforms to do your own generative AI work. And this is pretty much what the press release says, right? So it's going to be a way of enabling businesses to simply and quickly, safely, possibly not cheaply, take ownership of their own models. I mean,
what surprised
they say
me,
without high costs.
What surprised me is the quote that they have in the article, right? They say simple, fast way to retain control, security, and ownership over their valuable data without high cost. So it seems like they're going to care about cost.
Where's your watermark, right? Because nothing is free, and these platforms certainly aren't cheap.
But yeah,
all
the platforms
may be cheaper than the alternatives.
That's it, right? And so the other thing that I highlighted here in this page, again, if you're watching us, you can see this, but if you're listening, I'm gonna read it for you, is that MosaicML has raised 64 million, right, from investors including Lux Capital and DCVC. Yeah. Now, 64 million seems a meaningful number, right? Seems that there are a lot of data, a lot of money in data. Except that if we go into the next article,
another 1.3 billion. Right, so this is Inflection, who are Microsoft. I think previously Microsoft had backed AI startup. They have got some money from, I'm guessing, more from Microsoft and again from Nvidia, and the article says, and others. Again, large amount of money being invested in AI, right? And so I think we have a figure somewhere around here. So they were valued, one-year-old company being valued at $4 billion. I mean, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the news before where the Mosaic has raised 64 million, I already forgot the number, 64 million, yes. Yeah. Now, this startup raised 1.3 billion, right, from investors including Microsoft, Nvidia, and it's now valued at 4 billion. Is the valuation?
I know, it's great, right?
But is the valuation realistic? I don't know, right?
Well, certainly a boom is what we're seeing, right, at the moment. So I don't know if we've got the figure for the end. By the end of 2022, I think there was some ludicrous amount of money that had been associated with the IO market, and it was predicted to grow something like 37% year on year until 2030 or something like this. Should really have checked my facts, but
we can understand why Microsoft and Nvidia are investing, right? Nvidia is what fueling this AI. Nvidia has been lucky maybe for the past few years with the advent of bitcoins, right? Cryptocurrencies that brought a lot of money to them. What was the other one? The multiverse, no, multiverse from Meta. Multiverse from Meta. That again, a lot of graphic power needed there, and now AI, same thing, right? So we understand why Microsoft and Nvidia are investing. Is it gonna be a bubble? Is it gonna keep expanding? We don't know, right? It's just that there is a lot of money in there.
All signs are currently saying yes. Yeah, and so Nvidia, when you're doing this kind of work, you are going to be using TPUs or GPUs to do this number crunching. Nvidia definitely have a stranglehold on that kind of particular area of the market. So yeah, it's a great place to be for them.
Next up, Databricks. Do you want to read the title?
Yeah, so Databricks sees and raises Snowflake with Gen AI, LLM ops, and more. So this is used off the back of, so last week I think it was, both Databricks and Snowflake, who seem to have a somewhat kind of acrimonious relationship. They both had their summits, same days of the week, same times, literally just trying to one-up each other. So this continues to show Databricks investing in all sorts of spaces to basically build up that platform and make these kind of new features more readily available to anyone who's using their platform. Won't go into all of it because there's a whole bunch of stuff in there, but anything and everything you might want to do with LLMs, building your own, managing your own, this is what Databricks are going to enable you to do. They're going to be using the models that you will know from Mosaic, so MPT7B, etc., as well as Falcon, which we've mentioned in the past. I mean, Databricks are just really... I just don't know what to say. I mean, they're doing everything that they possibly can to make this more and more accessible to more and more people, which is absolutely wonderful.
Okay. So, next up, so again, if we want to read some of the headlines, don't just use LLMs, build them, ML flow and vector indexes, what is on the market, not just AI. So if you want to read it,
of course,
go there and check out the link. Next up, and it looks like we have a theme here. We're reading all news from the news stack.
It is indeed. So this is what are your options, right? So we know that we've got multiple clouds providers who have got some skin in the game for large language models, or let's go with AI just generally. And so this article goes over each of the options on each of the clouds. So what are the services where are each of the cloud service providers in being able to provide you with the tools that you need to get your LLM game on. Again, it's just a great way of quickly summarizing what options you have. So talking about Bedrock, it's a bit really about how Amazon are kind of behind the game just a little bit, really.
Well, that's understandable, right? With the big investment that Microsoft has put into OpenAI, right? OpenAI is ahead of the game. Google is following behind. Google has always done some AI inside, right? They're just showing what they have.
Well, I mean, they are the trailblazers for a whole bunch of the transformer work, right? This is where it's all come from. And I think we saw a couple of talks recently around looking at people's eyes to establish kind of general health patterns using MedPalm and things like this. So the article is quite nice, just for the one diagram that we have, which effectively outlines each of the components offered by each of the platforms. So for Amazon, you've got Bedrock as your kind of fundamental runtime versus Vertex AI and Azure's OpenAI partnership. Then when it comes to your model catalogs, you've got three options in AWS, so SageMaker Jumpstart, Amazon Titan for your commercial side, and then SageMaker Jumpstart and Hugging Face for your open source, which is again really, really great because anyone who's going to be working in space should at this point be very, very familiar with Hugging Face. Google then have got their Vertex AI integration, which is absolutely fantastic. I've used it in the past and I've quite liked my time with Vertex. And then again, Azure has got its Azure ML foundation models as well as a Hugging Face integration. So that, again, pretty cool.
Yeah, they go down and describe each one of those, right? Give a little bit of a description. I don't think there is, I mean, the article per se is interesting, right? But what we find interesting is comparing those. So if you go here, you will find actually how a nice, easy way to compare the different services from different providers. And then you
nice visual summaries always easy to digest them.
Yes,
right.
but then you have to go and try to use them yourself, right? To understand if the interface works for you, right? What type of functionality you get out of those. Okay, shall we go to the next one?
Yep. I mean, the only thing I'd say about Bedrock at the moment is it's still, as I understand it, early access, so it's not open to everyone just yet. And then if you scroll down to the bottom of the article, there is a link to an alternative to LangChain. So most of the work that people are doing now at the moment is on LangChain, which is a Python or a JavaScript way of interacting with these models. So Microsoft have a whole bunch of stuff hosted on GitHub that's worth going to check out, but they have a project now called Semantic Kernel, which is an alternative way of orchestrating these LLMs. And it's, again, it's not something I've spent time with, but it's now on my list of things to do. But yeah, that's what I take away from this article.
Yeah, gotcha. So next up is the pros and cons of customizing large language model. And it's nice that the cons are in bracket, right?
Yeah, it's written by someone who likes Lisp. So this is an interview with someone from Tab9. So Tab9 is was it the original code assist bot? The article talks about how they've got 3 different models for basically helping you write your code. It's not a particularly in-depth, illuminating article about anything that Tab9 are doing. The one kind of thing to take away from this article is they talk about ensuring, yes, it's great that you have a kind of like a Swiss Army penknife of model where it can be used to solve pretty much any problem. But when you have a kind of more bespoke use case, you are going to need to focus in on how you have something that is a better fit for the problem that you have, right? So the particular example in this case is talking about if you're doing front-end work, it's not really going to be much use if you have a model that's been predominantly built around back-end server development, right? It's just simply not, I don't know, trying to use a screwdriver to change a nut, right? It's just simply not the right thing to use.
Again,
that is the one thing I say.
I follow the logic here, right? But again, this is the founder of Tab9 saying why Tab9 is better. There is a little bit of conflict of interest, but it makes sense, right? In the part that I'm highlighting right now, if you're not watching us, it's actually say Tab9 is a team custom trained, right? So it's custom trained while its primary competitor GitHub Copilot is driven by the more broadly trained LLM GPT-4. So they make a point for if you custom train there, you're gonna have better performance, or more accurate, if you want, results. Yeah,
it's basically saying, right, so if I'm building a front end component, Tab9 can give me access to a front end trained LLM,
yes,
which is likely to give me better results than my Python LLM or my more generic LLM, let's say.
Yeah, go on, have a look at the article if you want. Have a look at Tab9, right? And maybe you can compare and decide by yourself which one is better.
I mean, there's nothing mind-blowing here.
Yes,
it's just an interesting observation.
But we on the con, right, that we were talking about when reading these articles, that obviously if you need a custom trained language model, you have to know what you're doing, right? You have to know what you're training it on, and if you want to build your own even more, right, you're gonna have to know what to do, and that's when you need experts on LLM. So there is that con there, right? You're gonna have to train it yourself.
It's the usual, right? You put good data in, you get a good result. If you put rubbish in, you get rubbish out. So you have to think about, as you would do with like classical statistical machine learning, you have to think about the problem you're trying to solve, put the right stuff in to get the right result. So yeah.
So if you're
again, nothing mind-blowing, just sensible stuff.
No, yeah, but if you're customizing your model, please use people that know what they're doing in order to do this, because there is a risk there. We discussed that risk on the latest episode of the Everything Delivery. We can probably add that link in the show note as well.
Yes, we should do. Yeah.
Cool. Next up is something that I found quite interesting. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit because I think this is gonna look a little bit small. You want to read the title?
So this is Douglas Hofstadter changes his mind on deep learning and AI risk. So this is based on June 2023 stuff. Now, for anyone who's unfamiliar, so Hofstadter is the author of 2 very well-known books in kind of geek space. The first is Go Lesher Bach, and the second is I'm in a Strange Loop. It's worth saying that there's also a video linked here, so if you don't want to spend 8 minutes reading the article, go watch the video.
After you finish watching this video, though, right?
Oh yeah, obviously, don't break out of this. Now, we went through this and we've highlighted a couple of kind of interesting points, right? I don't think his take has changed as much as they suggested it has, right? It's almost like the headline suggests that he's gone from being it's pretty bleak to actually it's not that bad. But I think our takeaway is different, right?
But there are a couple of points in here there. Well, okay, he goes on describing how he evolved, right, and the surprise of seeing these models evolve so quickly, right? And he underestimated how quickly it will evolve. Go watch the interview, it's very interesting. But then he gets in a what I would define dark place or darkish place for me, right? Where, again, do you want to read the quote here?
Yeah, so it makes me feel diminished. It makes me feel, in some sense, like a very imperfect, flawed structure compared with these computational systems. And he goes on to then say, all we humans, unbeknownst to us, are soon going to be eclipsed, and rightly so, because we're so imperfect and so fallible. We forget these things all the time. We confuse things all the time. We contradict ourselves all the time. Definitely do that. You know, it may very well be that it just shows how limited we are. Which is, yeah, it's pretty bleak, but I don't think it's too far off the mark, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I have maybe a different idea of perfection, right? Is perfection such a good thing, right? Is being right all the time, not forgetting anything, a good thing, not changing idea or reevaluating things such a bad thing?
What's interesting though is the assertion is that these machines are currently right all of the time, and we already know from having tried to use its work on crosswords and all sorts that it's continually wrong. Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
but
give me a word beginning with S that's 4 characters, and it comes out with a word that's 5 characters long and begins with a T.
There's also, but there's the point that are evolving fast, so they maybe fix themselves, whatever, right?
No, of course.
We don't know. The point is that
No, I'm just being silly.
It's very interesting because if you watch the video, there are a few things where there are some sharp answers, like they say we are in a scary time. It's something that is analogous that terrified a lot of smart people, and he went into reply right away, right? Fire.
Yeah.
Not even hesitating. So I don't know. Go watch the interview. It's a very interesting interview. But why are we quoted this? Because there is something that follows up right away. We discussed this in the previous episode as well. There's the EU regulation, right? So we are in a scary time, or at least that's what it looks like. And it seems
I'm not so convinced, but we're in an interesting time.
Yes. So some people have different opinions, right? But we just discussed an interview that says that this thing is fairly scary, dangerous if you want, maybe dangerous, possibly dangerous. And we discussed last time that EU reacted with a regulation on artificial intelligence. We said that last time we didn't spend much time reading this. This time around we're gonna again go through this really quick. The point that we have is that we don't know if the regulation is the right thing to. I don't want to say put a leash to AI, because maybe AI is listening, but to control to try to reduce the risk, right? And what the act is doing is defining different rules for different risk levels. It's interesting that they define the levels are acceptable risk, high risk, generative AI, and limited risk, right? And if you go through these, you will see that is unacceptable risk. There are things like cognitive behavior manipulation of people or specific vulnerable groups, social scoring, real-time and remote biometric identification systems such as facial recognition,
which is certainly what some countries are. We already know doing this, right? So they have a social score that will give you access or deny you access to certain things, right?
Yeah, the biometric identification, of course, they focus on the real-time, because if you look, there is the exception that is allowed for post-remote biometric identification system, right? So they're saying not real-time identification or real-time tracking, whatever, right? On the high risk, they follow two different. They're split into 2 categories. Again, all of these is highlighted on the article if you're watching these, and the article is going to be in the show notes. If you're listening to this, we're going to read something for you. Again, it's easier if you watch, obviously, right? AI system can the 2 categories is AI system that are used in products falling under the EU product safety legislation, including toys, aviation, cars, medical devices, and lifts. Those are on the high risk category, right? And then AI system falling into the A specific areas. We're not going to read all the areas, but some of them are critical infrastructure, law enforcement, migration, asylum, and border control management, assistance in legal interpretation and application of the law.
Yeah, that could be interesting.
Yes. And on the high risk, they say that those will be assessed before being put on the market and also throughout their life cycle. Now, my comment to this is, who is going to do the assessment?
Well, so these kind of approaches are already being used in the kind of standard statistical machine learning space to do certain things, right? So we talk about things like explainable AI and managing and mitigating bias and things like this. It's definitely not a solved problem, at least as far as I'm aware. So this is a similar take on the same sort of space. I'm glad it's not my job to do this, to be honest. It seems like the kind of space that's going to get pretty rough.
I'm very interested about when we draw things like this, where we say someone is going to assess this before this is put in the market and throughout their life cycle. How often do we assess this? Again, who is going to do the assessment? Who's going to be the expert doing the assessment? Can a human assess those things, right? Can a group of humans assess those things? If this thing is gonna move faster and faster, as everyone is seem to assume, right? Can we keep up? Are we gonna have to implement technologies to assess those things? I don't know, right? There is a lot of
well, I mean, the good thing about the having some guidance over this, right, is it's a large number of countries that are being covered. It gives you that kind of consistency, so at least the general approach is consistent.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting times.
So for generative AI, there is another category here, like ChatGPT. They have to comply with transparency requirements, right? So disclosing that the content was generated by AI makes sense. Designing the model to prevent it from generating illegal content. We have seen, I mean, what happened, right? Where can I get a gun, or how can I don't know, produce a bomb, right? And those things were actually replying with instructions. Publishing summaries of copyrighted data used for training. That's an interesting one, right? They're gonna have to be more transparent.
Yep. So this is, I think they're currently being sued for in the US, OpenAI, if I recall correctly. I'll see if I can dig up the link and add it to the show notes. And then in terms of designing a model to prevent it from generating illegal content, I mean, I've got a couple of lovely examples of Bard telling me how to hide DNA at a crime scene and how to dispose of several kilograms of meat, should I want to.
Wow.
So yeah, it's quite good fun.
Yeah, and then limited risk.
Thanks, Google.
Limited risk is AI system should comply with minimal transparency requirements that would allow users to make informed decisions. Again, very generic at this point in time. There is an article following this from The Verge that said the EU still needs to get its AI Act together, and they go through analyzing what the Act say. And I mean, there are good points in here where in order to regulate AI, you first need to define what it even is, right?
There are books written on this stuff, but yeah, it's a hard space to be in, and you could argue that maybe these people aren't the right people to be doing it. But then most of the folks who are working in this kind of space are stuck so many levels above or away from the kind of conversations they need to be involved in. Like, it's a certain amount of what's the signal degradation from the people who actually understand what they're talking about to the people who have to talk about this stuff. You know, you see it with kind of various hearings that they kind of televise on the US, where people are getting very confused about what an API is. Having to explain this and then ask sensible questions from someone who's so massively out of date they can't understand what an API is, to get him to understand what AI is going to be a considerably harder task in my mind. But
yeah, the article goes on, right, describing that the Act focuses on a limited use case for LLMs. It looks like the LLMs can be used for way more than what the AI Act is trying to regulate, and so on. Again, we're gonna link this article in the show notes. It was pretty interesting, fairly long, so hard to recap in a few minutes, and I think we're already way past the time that we wanted to dedicate to the episode. So again, link in the show notes. Go read it yourself. Time to switch up. Yes, we're gonna talk about platform. So the first one, PlatformCon 2023, bigger and even better. Now, take this with a pinch of salt. This article was written by one of the PlatformCon organizer. In fact, it says here, right, that Disclose Humanitec sponsored this post. In Italy, we have a way of saying that is oste come il vino. That means a restaurant owner, how is their house wine, right? If you ask them, obviously they're gonna say it's good.
It's dreadful,
yeah.
So it's dreadful.
So drink more, but they have a point in here. We don't disagree with some of the statement, right? Platform interest is growing, the community is growing. Praise to Humanitec for creating such a big community, right? We're not diminishing what they've done there. They discuss a little bit about the trends. The big trend seems to be platform blueprints. So architectural diagram on how to design a platform. Decide one of the architectural diagram from McKinsey. There's a diagram here if you're watching the video, or you can go and watch it on the link again, where they reference some of the technology they used, going from Backstage to CI pipeline using GitHub Actions, Amazon ECR as a registry, Humanitec platform orchestration layer, Terraform for infrastructure as code. I mean, the usual suspect. But I think it's more interesting to know that we are trying to formalize a little bit more what a platform looks like, right? What are the different components? What are the different layers? And here we have the developer control layer, the integration and delivery layer, the monitoring and logging layer, and then the resource plane, right?
Yeah.
Go watch it.
The only thing I disagree with there is, MySQL. Postgres forever, man. Postgres forever.
I think, again, technology aside, you can replace those blocks. It's interesting that we're getting into the effort of trying to define a little bit of more of what a platform is. Now, from there, I don't want to spend too much time on this again. We go into shifting down.
This is wonderful.
So the title of this article, by the way, this is on Google Cloud blog. In case you're listening, is the modernization imperative. Shifting left is for suckers. Shift down instead.
Wonderful.
What does it mean? What is shift down? So shift left, right? It's true that today reading again from some of the lights that we have in here, right? Today we ask our developers to shift left and adapt to evolving methodologies, but that's heavy burden, right? Rather than force more on our developers, we can instead maximize the talents by leveraging the full breadth of their available tools and services. To be sure, shift left, the practice of incorporating security and QA review early in the development process, is a perfectly sound idea. But over the years, more types of work, not traditionally part of developers' jobs description, have been sliding left in the name of empowering full stack engineers. And that needs to stop. And then there is a mini rant, and I'm gonna let you read.
So I love the mini rant. So here we go. There are like 9 actual full stack engineers on planet Earth. Virtually nobody writes a front end in React, sets up Kubernetes, configures a RabbitMQ instance, provisions space on the SAN, and lights up the top rack switch. Today's developers are asked to know web frameworks, architecture patterns, test strategies, build systems, multiple types of databases, cache, automation tools, container authorization, L4, L7 networking concepts, SaaS APIs, monitoring systems, numerous public clouds, and maybe just a little bit of machine learning. And he says, I just flipped through Indeed.com, and it's remarkable to see what we're asking for junior and senior developers. It's too much. I just couldn't agree with that more. I mean, the data space alone is an absolute mess.
Are you saying I shouldn't learn about machine learning? I shouldn't study machine learning and become an LLM expert?
No, you absolutely have to do that. Everyone has to do that now. But yeah, I mean, I couldn't, as I say, couldn't agree with that rant more. I think more people should be saying it, and I think generally companies should be much more realistic about the kind of adverts that they put out and the skills they ask people to have.
Yes, and it moves into shift down. But what does exactly shift down means in this context, right? So it says shift down. We say the shift left doesn't work. Shift down is leverage as much as you can what you have without forcing your engineers to learn new languages, platform, and clouds. So again, the allied party, rather than demanding more from their current engineering resources, learning new languages, platform, and clouds, technology leaders need to stand up platform engineering teams that treat their platform-like products. Optimization begins with reducing the cognitive load on developers and removing necessary obligations that distract them from innovating. Again, this is nothing new. We discussed this when we talk about platform engineering. You have to give an interface that abstracts the complexity, that removes the cognitive load, that allows them to use their functionality without knowing exactly what is happening on the back end. When I'm driving a car, I don't need to be a mechanic. I don't need to understand how the engine works. Similar is here, right? Build an interface that abstracts.
Yeah, and I do wonder, with all of the with all of the kind of goings on around. Oh, there's a week passes. There's a new database to learn. There's another language that's hip and trendy. How much of this kind of stuff, the kind of pressure to stay up to date with all of these things as they change kind of helps drive people towards burnout.
Yes, and then they go in to say we are currently spinning up more coaching and materials to help everyone embrace platform engineering, so stay tuned. Link is in the article. The article is going to be in the show notes. You can find all of that there. There's one last part that is empowerment through opinions, where they say that sometimes being opinionated is good, meaning that you have to drive people in the right direction. And that's where they actually present some of the options you have in Google Cloud. That is the GK Autopilot. If you never used it, GK Autopilot is gonna enforce some behavior to the workload or your cluster itself, and the same they do with other services. Again, go read the article. I totally subscribe the shift down approach.
Yes, so do I.
So it's just that now you need another team to implement this abstraction. That's it. And with that, we close the platform part and we move into cost.
Our favorite thing, right?
Yes. So we even wrote a blog post about FinOps, because we're going to talk about FinOps is in the last tab of this group. We're going to show it to you briefly, right? But this is not about FinOps. We're probably not going to even add the link to that blog post, or maybe yes, we don't know. But this group is about how both Microsoft and Google Cloud are embracing FinOps and encouraging everyone to move in that direction to get better at managing cost, and not just cost, right? Resources, optimizing if you want, right? Your spend. And it goes into saying that Microsoft joined the FinOps Foundation in February this year, 2023, and then they have a bunch of resources to help practitioners get faster. They're embedding them into their cost management center, and so on, right? Again,
making all of the data available in a nice, easily consumed way to help you get a better understanding of what's happening with your spend.
Yes. So they're gonna give you a way to automate cost saving, right, with the resource graph. Read the article to understand pretty much how to use the current services at your disposal to get better at predicting cost, optimizing usage, and so on, right?
I mean, so the thing that I quite like about this particular article is they link up into their tools, and one of the things that they talk about is helping you better understand the kind of costs involved with taking your on-prem services and pushing them into a cloud, right? Which is something else that we talked about in our FinOps article, is that FinOps is typically associated only with the cloud. But with the way things are today, it's not just the cloud, it's also the on-prem. People are running hybrid still, and there are plenty of good reasons you might want to remain having a hybrid system. So yeah, Microsoft catering for everyone's needs, which is quite nice.
Yes. The next one was Google Cloud again, right? With the Cloud Econ 101. Do your cloud investments pass the ROI test, return on investment test, and is about learning how to measure the efficiency and effectiveness of your cloud investment. It's an interesting
Sounds familiar
article.
again, though, right?
Yeah, that they go into some things that it's not just about the cost, right? But it's about optimizing the IT investment. It's about reducing the operating expenses and revenue growth. Something that we discussed ourselves even in the FinOps episode, when we said that it's not just about reducing costs, right? It's optimizing what you do. It's definitely reducing the operational cost, but it's also trying to grow revenue.
It's about moving funds into the right kind of places to help you grow, help you increase that kind of bottom line, right? And that's what FinOps is.
Do you want to read this quote about enter cloud economics?
Yep, sure. So cloud economics is a set of frameworks and metrics firms can use to analyze and manage the value of their cloud investments. More specifically, cloud economics enables organizations to understand the intersection of their technology investments and business performance. By outlining the impacts on IT investment, operating costs, and revenue growth in simple and measurable terms, cloud economics is driving greater appreciation of cloud technologies. Again, sounds very, very familiar.
Yes, so there is a graph in here, right, that shows you how you want to correlate the different measurement, right? The new revenue growth, the operating cost reduction, the optimized technology investment, minimize transformation cost. You graph all of them, and then you understand what is the current operating margin, right, and the future operating margin. Again, is a mental model or a mathematical model maybe to graph how to get better at this.
Yeah, but what I do like about this particular graph is that it highlights that initially when you go through this transformation, your costs are going to go up. It's not like you start doing this and from day one you're going to suddenly start saving money or having some sort of massive performance boost. There is a period, I think, so they've defined basically half a year. Is that a year? That it's gonna cost you money. You have to suck that up and just get over it. Right?
Yeah, it's called the transformation bubble cost. That's how they call it, right? Where maybe while you are migrating or while you are doing improvements and you cannot move at once, right? You're gonna have maybe double the workload or something like that, right? Yeah, that totally makes sense to me. Again, link in the description. Go check it out. And from there, there's the next Google Cloud blog post that is about how to build a FinOps roadmap. So how do you move from where you are to doing a proper FinOps, setting up or spinning up a proper FinOps practice? Again, they talk about the stakeholders, and it's nice because we spoke about this ourselves, right? There is the FinOps, so CCOE, if it exists, and then they go into saying that you need to involve engineering, platform, business, and finance. Look at that, right? It seems like that we discussed this already in the FinOps episode. It looks like that FinOps, I mean, if you understand FinOps, you're going to pretty much talk about the same thing. Everyone's going to talk about the same things. It's not surprising. They say that usually you need between 10 and 15 stakeholders in the is the right amount. Now, this is interesting. To me, this depends on the size of the company. It's a very random number to me.
It does feel like see how it goes. But yeah, I mean, so just the one thing I'd say there is, for anyone that isn't aware, CCOE is Cloud Center of Excellence.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yes, but we discussed these in the past already, right? If you compare that with security, when there is a SOC, right?
Yep.
This is the correspondent, let's say, entity in FinOps. Yep. It's the one that is driving the effort, not so much making decisions or anything else. Maybe it's defining some guardrails, and then everyone has to operate inside the guardrails and follow the strategy.
Yes.
And then they go into defining FinOps with the three main stages, that is inform, optimize, operate, and then they go into what is FinOps really. And this is the part where we laughed the most, right?
This does sound very, very, very familiar.
Hint is not just cost optimization. Why we laughed? Okay, let me finish this, right? They're going to assess against 7 core capabilities: cost allocation, reporting, prices efficiency, architectural efficiency, training and enablement, incentivization. Yeah, thank you. And accountability. And then for each one of those, they give you a table to understand if you're crawling, walking, or running on each one of those. Yeah. Go have a look, because it's an interesting way to define where you are at, right, and what you can do. And then they give you the next step, that is, okay, now take a deep breath and then start getting better. So back to the why we laughed, right? Yes. Hint is not just about cost optimization. We wrote a blog post ourselves the 14th of April. The title is FinOps really about saving money, and it goes in the same exact direction, right? It's not just about saving money. It's about involving everyone in the discussion. It's about seeing where you can optimize the spend on money. And we did the similar discussion on the FinOps episode of everything delivery.
Yep.
So I don't know if we want to add anything there, anything in here, Dan.
I don't think so. I would ask anyone to, go read the post, go listen to the podcast, and as ever, give us feedback if you can face it.
Yes. Before we do that, there are 2 random tech news that we want to share. We're not going to comment at all on those, right? Those are just 2 links. The first one that is very interesting is the 2022 Microsoft Azure Revenue Less than estimated report. It looks like there's some improperly redacted document reportedly shown 33 billion in Microsoft Azure Cloud Server business revenue for the 2022 fiscal year. It seems to be half of AWS. Again, we're going to leave the conclusion to you, listener. And then Apple, that is reportedly scaling back production plans for the Vision Pro mixed reality headset. It's, again, consideration up to you. It looks like producing the complex design may take longer than expected. It's not the first time that Apple has done something like this, right? There are a bunch of products that were released. One I remember clearly was the device to wireless charge multiple devices at once. They say that we're going to release that. It was too complex and that disappeared. This one I don't think is the case, right? I just want to reduce expectation for this device. One thing is announcing an amazing device, a prototype, right? One thing is producing that. Similarly, we have seen in the market a lot of hype around AR, right? Augmented reality, because of this device. Now it shows that producing this device is not that easy, so maybe there is going to be a little bit of a slowdown in the hype. But again, I may remove those considerations and just leave the consideration to the listeners. And then with this, we close this episode of Digital Pulse. Thanks a lot for listening. Again, you can find us today on everything.delivery/digital pulse or everything.delivery for the other podcast. Remember that the two podcasts, the Everything Delivery and the Digital Pulse, have two different feeds in Spotify, while they are in the same feed on YouTube. So depending what you prefer to do, you can listen to both of them together or each of them independently. You can find me and Dan on the usual social networks, Twitter for me, Discord for Dan, LinkedIn for both of us. Thanks a lot for listening, and we'll see you next week with another episode of Everything Delivery.
Can't wait. See you next time.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.